The National Bureau of Statistics in its latest report shows that within a 3-year period covering December 2017 to December 2020, Nigeria generated a total sum of 6.5 trillion naira from non-oil exports. This revenue translates to a 5.8 trillion naira 5.8 trillion naira revenue shortfall, which is lower than the 12.3 trillion naira target set by the federal government under its zero oil plan. In the fourth quarter of 2016, the Nigerian Export Promotion Council conceived the zero oil plan to increase the contribution to the non-oil sector to Nigeria's gross domestic product by 20%. According to the NEPC's 2016 annual report, the focus of the plan is to generate at least a minimum of 40 to 50% of Nigeria's earnings from non-oil exports. For 2020, Nigeria generated 1.4 trillion naira from non-oil exports, which constituted only 11.4% of its 12.5 trillion naira worth of exports. Let's look at the impact of this. I introduced him earlier. He's joining us live in the studio as the Vice President of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Of course, he holds many other caps. Thank you so very much, Mr. Gabriel Idahosa. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Yes, I read this yesterday and I said, why is our non-oil sector not performing as well as we want with all of the efforts that we're putting into it?
Well, the non-oil sector is not isolated from the entire economy. So there are some fundamentals that make economies to work that we need to look at and then drill it down into the non-oil sector. First is the policy environment, the general economic policy environment and how it affects productive activity. There's a big global ease of doing business that the government is doing, and certain components of that affect exports. For example, physical access to the ports to export, whether it's the seaport or the airports, how easy it is for an exporter to move the goods to the port and let them leave very quickly. A lot of exporters will tell you that just physical process is extremely difficult. And you have goods rotting away at the ports. So you start from there. Then you look at the cost of export. There are layers of costs in any product you want to export. First is the raw material that you need, then the production process in your factory, and then the logistics of moving it to the port. In each of that, we have the issues that we know. From power, for example, to produce the products, power to process the products, the roads that connect your factory to the port, the port processes, that is the clearing processes, the customs, the security, the physical process of getting through our ports. It's there, it's improving. We must accept that it's improving.
Okay.
The rails have come on board. The inland ports are now being operational, so you can now export from, say, Kaduna Inland Port. The Ibadan Inland Container Port is also coming on quickly. So we are in a transition period where exporters are seeing fairly slow but steady progress in the infrastructure you need for smooth export. But until that happens, you will not see a very significant rise in exports. Most exporters are doing it now with a lot of grit, with a lot of effort, with a lot of self-belief, like the typical Nigerian trying to get through the most difficult situations. Unlike other countries where, because they see exports as a matter of survival, they have never had the experience of foreign currency flowing in from oil, for example. A lot of countries have never had that experience. So export was a matter of life and death for them as a country. So all these processes of facilitating export were built up over time. For example, if you want to export fresh flowers from Jos to the UK, for example, the process involved, as you can imagine now, is quite complex. because you've got to deal with the cold chain process, the packaging, the ports. But in other countries, once you want to export flour, fresh cut flour from, say, a country like Kenya to the UK or anywhere in Europe, the whole process is all wired. From your farm, the product,
seamless.
The package is seamless. It gets to the airport on time. The flight takes off on time. It arrives there on time, and from there it goes to the shops. So, one of the reasons why we are struggling now to perfect our export process is that we are doing it because of the fall of revenues, foreign exchange revenues from oil.
Exactly, it's like an alternative.
It was not a deliberate engineered process of building an export capacity. And so it takes time to do something you did not plan to do, you were not wired to do, you did not have a coherent long-term policy and process to execute, but we are now trying to get into it. In the last few years, the Export Promotion Council is doing a lot of work. They are becoming very creative and involving the private sector and trying to diversify. Another key thing, diversify our non-export base from commodities to intellectual property. For example, there's a lot of exports now in ICT. We are beginning to export information technology as a primary product on top of the Nollywood, of course, that has built over the years. And you are beginning to see also some other areas coming into export because the process is now, logistics, for example, is now clear to government that you have to open up the economy in a manner that export flows through the system, like the blood flows through the entire body. Export is not just for a group of people. These are exporters. You and I can be in the export chain just by looking for an exporter and say, what do you export? I can produce it for you. I don't want to get into export. That export value chain is only developing by itself, organically. Government has not come out to establish export value chains in any major area. Even Nollywood. Nollywood started the export by themselves before government now said, oh, we are going to support you. We are going to build studios. We are going to give you money to do some marketing. We are going to begin to provide an ecosystem for an industry. But if you want to do it as a policy, as a process, you first of all understand the whole process of any product or service you want to export. If you want to export ICT, for example, the Indians build their IT parks in some towns, like Bangalore in India, and the whole city is like just to export IT technology and services. The government of that city or state has to know that there is a big value to be created by having that ecosystem. Like Lagos is talking about a smart city where you have very fast broadband across the city. So if I am working as an IT remote worker for a company in the US, I don't have issue about broadband. I have the fastest broadband that I need. The cost of power is low. The broadband is 100% on, 24 hours, 24/7. So all I need is just my talent to provide that service. And my customer at the other end of the world understands that I'm available 24/7. But here in Nigeria, you have to struggle to provide some of those things. From broadband to power, you've got to work it out yourself. But a state or even a local government that sees the value in it can just create an ICT park, provide very high-speed power, provide the broadband service, and provide pay-as-you-use. I don't have to build my own office, get my own broadband infrastructure, because I don't need it 24/7 myself. But if the facility is there and I can walk in there, plug and play, I can advertise my services to the whole world and provide the service. So these structures and processes, we are gradually getting it. Until we get that, expecting the massive rise in non-oil export is like just daydreaming.
Really good foundation to start thinking. Honestly, I really appreciate that, Mr. Idahosa. Clear explanation that it's a strategic process and we really need to follow it to the latter. Now, I'm looking at the zero oil plan in its entirety. and relating it to, let me say, the economic sustainability plan now at the moment. I think there was only a 50 billion export expansion fund that is also in the ESP and all of this. Now, would you say that Nigerians are also very receptive to this? Are Nigerians looking at this area? Are they thinking that, yes, we must really look away from oil? Are we getting more people to see that there is light at this point?
Well, there's a lot of interest. Because this is simple, I will make money as an exporter. So clearly there's a lot of interest. And there's a lot of uptake from these grants and government services. We have to give that credit to the government.
Yes.
There's a lot of uptake. There's a lot of interest. There's also a lot of understanding that private sector has to work with government. So private sector groups, the chambers of commerce, the export, almost every commodity in Nigeria now has an export association, from cashew to cassava, cocoa. They all have export groups that are working with government agencies to use those policies. So those policies, to some extent, are working. The people to use them, the various exporters in their groups are there. They are keen into those processes. But the sheer magnitude of what you need is the question. You know, in a country of our size, 50 billion can be taken up in a few days if there's a process that allows it to flow quickly. So if you bring in another 50 million, it will be gone, because there are hundreds, in spite of security and other issues. There are a lot of people who understand the export, are ready to go into the export, and are in fact exporting in spite of all these problems. If you work closely with the exporters, they will tell you they are exporting from gemstones, from minerals to ICT, to even the flowers we are talking about.
I was at one. I saw Akamo was exported. I saw it. I was there.
Every day. These products are packaged foods. Amala, gari,
yes,
soya beans, packaged, and they are flying out of this country every day. But what we are saying is that the quantities are far lower than our potentials. There's no reason, for example, why Ghana should export more yams than Nigeria. Whether in terms of size, whether in terms of how long we have been in the business, we should export far more yams, for example, than smaller countries who jumped into the business. So we are in export, but the size, we have to scale up very significantly. Whatever the product, whether it's cashew, whether it's sesame, we are doing some significant work. Our efforts are improving. The infrastructure issues are being addressed. We maybe another 6 months, 1 year, by the time the Ibadan inland container ports really starts. The southwest, together with the rail line that goes from Ibadan straight to the port now, you can actually move your goods directly to the port. Once the physical infrastructure is in place, then the human process is left. The people at the customs who will clear this process, the staff of the Nigerian ports, all the paperwork. Again, a lot of automation is going on. And so that's also something that the business community, we need to keep putting pressure on government. In a lot of countries, we say we want to be among the top 20 countries in the world. You don't talk to anybody to export most of these things. There is a place you go online and you go through the whole process, pay whatever you want to pay. A lot of exporters don't even know where the port is. They've never been to the port where the products are exported.
Correct.
Because they pay all the duties. The logistics people pick up the goods from their factory. The factory is gone. All they do is track their products online. They don't have to go and see somebody in customs at the ports and clearing agents and all kinds of man hours that are lost. That has nothing to do with producing for export, but just running around offices and people. So our process is also, I will say it's important to stress that government is improving a lot of these things. For people in practice in the business, they can see the efforts government is doing. But we need to move faster, and our scale has to be much more than where they are now because of the size of our country. So your impact is not felt when you are doing it at a small scale.
Let's talk about standards. I always like to talk about standards when we talk about exports, because it's something that has worried us for some time. We know sometimes that we had some rejections of some of our paints and all of that. I think they didn't meet up some. And not only that, I'm sure for what do you think we're doing? I know the NEPC has been training exporters also with regards to that, well, packaging of goods and all of this, even particularly as we look at the AFCFTA, which we are yet to start tapping from.
Well, the export standards are the essential part of the processes we are talking about. If you are going to export, your internal standards are no more relevant.
Yes.
There are global standards, and there are global standard organizations. The standard organization of Nigeria is part of the global system. So one of the first things an exporter learns or is required to learn is the standard process. What is the process of complying with the standards in my line of business? If I want to export paint, if I want to export sesame seed, if I want to export cashew, what is the standard? First is information. Some exporters may rush into export without getting the information and without going through the process of training, which is available, readily available. So the issues of standards we have with export has to do with, first, lack of training. Second, attempts to cut corners, which unfortunately we should accept is not possible once you step out of this country. If you try to cut corners, you will always have your fingers burnt. So if you want to get into export, you must commit yourself to understanding and executing the export standard process. Even within the advanced countries, they tell you this product is export quality. So that means that even within the advanced country, we produce in the UK or whatever, Japan, wherever, they will tell you this product is export quality. So export quality is clearly there as a specific goal. We really cannot get out of it and try to say we are exporting any product or service based on what we do within the country. So we must accept that once you step into export, the issue of standards is completely different from whatever we are doing. So as a factory, if you want to start to export, you have to re-engineer your factory. You have to re-engineer your process. As a farmer, if you want to export, you have to go engineer. And if you don't have the capacity, don't go into export. It's better not to go into export if you have not prepared yourself for an export standard. It's better to service the local market and let the exporters take care of exports.
So wrapping up now, so how soon? So if we continue at this pace, do you see us the profit or the benefits of the export markets? When do you see start trickling into Nigeria?
No, they are trickling in.
As much as we want.
You see, the thing with export really is that you are never going to have exporters going to announce, I have made $500,000 from export last month.
True.
A lot of that is happening as we speak, as people operating in industry. A lot of the export is happening. It will continue to grow. Our concern as a country is that what we earn from exports now is far below the potential. Now the answer is, when will it be? There is no cut-off date. It's just going to keep growing year in, year out, especially as government fixes certain things, like the rail to the ports, the new ports being built now in Lekki, in One. As we build more ports, the new ports in Calabar, for example, where exporters can now export directly, and there are super tankers and vessels that can bet there. So as those infrastructure improve, you will see exports growing. It will grow over time. It's not going one day to be announced that exports have suddenly grown 100%.
I must say it's really interesting talking to you about this topic, because a lot has been made clear. Thank you. I've been speaking to Vice President, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mr. Gabriel Idahosa, letting us understand the export market and, of course, how it will grow with all of the positives that we see happening along that line. Thank you so much for spending your afternoon with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.